The bus smelled of sweat and nervous fear. It wasn't the kind of smell you could cover up with deodorant or the cheap peppermint gum most of the boys chewed as if they were gnawing on their last bit of comfort. No, this was the kind of smell that rose from inside the body, a sour tang that came from knowing you might be dead before sunrise. 75 boys sat crammed shoulder to shoulder on the rattling bus, each one staring out the tinted windows as the forest road stretched endlessly ahead. No one spoke much. Conversations died quickly, like birds shot from the sky, leaving only the hum of the tires and the occasional cough. Ethan Carter sat by the window, fingers drumming nervously against his thigh. He was 17, lanky, with dark circles carved under his eyes. He kept trying to tell himself this was just another contest, like football tryouts, like the spelling bee he lost in middle school, like the county fair. Except in those contests, no one followed you with rifles. The long walk, the older kids whispered in school hallways. The game of death. The march that never ends. Everyone knew the rules. You had to walk at 4 miles per hour. Drop below that speed 3 times, you get a warning. For warnings. They shoot you. No stopping. No sitting. No resting. No mercy. You walk until you collapse, or until you're the last one left. The winner gets the prize. Anything you want. Fame. Money. A life free of fear. The losers got a bullet. Ethan's stomach twisted. He hadn't eaten since yesterday, the lump of dread in his throat making food impossible. He glanced at the boys across the aisle. Some looked calm, too calm, like they had already accepted whatever fate waited for them on the cracked asphalt. Others looked wild-eyed, jittery, bouncing their legs as if they were already trying to warm up their muscles for the endless road. The bus shuddered as it turned off the main highway onto a dirt path leading into a clearing. Ethan's heart leapt. This was it, the starting line. The air outside looked unnaturally still, the forest looming like black walls pressing in on them. A soldier in a gray uniform stood waiting with a clipboard. Behind him, parked in neat rows, were the half-tracks, massive, armored trucks with mounted rifles gleaming on top. Each would follow the walkers down the road, engines growling like predators. The boys had joked about them in hushed voices before, calling them death wagons, but no one was laughing now. The bus door creaked open. "All right, boys," the soldier barked, voice hard as stone. "Line up. Single file." Feet shuffled. Backpacks were pulled tighter. Some kids whispered prayers under their breath. Ethan's throat burned with the need to run, to get out, to disappear into the forest. But there was no escape. They had all volunteered. That was the sick truth. He had signed the forms, inked his name in shaky letters while his mother sobbed into a kitchen towel. His father hadn't said a word, only clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder, eyes hollow. Ethan thought of that silence now, the heavy weight of it pressing on him. Why had he agreed? For glory? For money? For some childish dare to prove himself? Or maybe he had just been curious. The line shuffled forward, and Ethan's sneakers hit dirt. The clearing opened into a long stretch of road, marked by a thick white stripe across the cracked pavement. Above it hung a banner, the words, "The Long Walk," printed in bold red letters. Beneath it stood the major. Everyone knew about him. He was the one who presided over every walk, his presence a constant reminder of the rules. Rumor had it he hadn't smiled in 20 years. He stood tall and rigid, gray hair clipped short, medals glittering on his chest. His eyes were cold, colorless, like the reflection of light on a knife. He didn't need to shout. His silence carried more weight than any voice. The boys lined up along the white stripe, 75 bodies in a jagged row. The major looked at each of them in turn, his gaze sharp enough to cut flesh. "You know why you're here," he said finally, voice low, even. "The rules are simple. Walk or die. Do not stop. Do not fall behind. Warnings will be given. Fail to correct yourself, and you will be executed. The walk begins at sunrise. Only one of you will finish. The rest will feed the earth. Silence hung over the clearing like a suffocating shroud. Somewhere in the forest, a crow cawed, sharp and mocking. Ethan's legs trembled. He could feel the heartbeat of the boy standing next to him, a blond kid with freckles and a twisted grin that looked forced. The major gave a final nod, then stepped back. Soldiers moved among the boys, checking their shoes, their packs, their bodies. One soldier grabbed Ethan's wrist, pressed cold metal against his skin. A digital bracelet. It beeped softly as it locked around his wrist. That'll track your pace, the soldier muttered. Don't let it hit red. Ethan stared at the band, its small screen glowing faintly. A countdown ticked across it, 6 a.m. Start. He looked up at the sky. It was still dark, but a thin line of gray touched the horizon. Dawn was coming. The boys were herded into small tents for the last hour before the walk. Inside, Ethan found a cot, a plastic bottle of water, and nothing else. No distractions. Just silence and the sound of his own breath. He sat on the edge of the cot, gripping the bottle so tightly it crinkled. His thoughts were a storm. Faces flashed through his mind, his mother's tear-streaked cheeks, his younger sister's wide eyes as she asked him, "Why do you have to go?" He had told her, "Because I can win." But now, in the silence, he wasn't sure he believed that. A voice broke through the tent wall. A boy whispering. Then another. Nervous laughter. Then crying. Raw, broken sobs. The walls were thin, and every sound was magnified, echoing in Ethan's skull. He lay back, staring at the canvas ceiling, heart pounding. His mouth was dry. His stomach churned. He tried to imagine the road, the rhythm of footsteps, the endless stretch of gray pavement. He tried not to imagine the gunshots. The minutes dragged. Each second heavier than the last. Finally, a trumpet blast split the air, sharp and merciless. The walk was about to begin. Ethan stepped outside with the others. The forest loomed around them, shadows twisting in the dim light. The white stripe across the road glowed faintly, like a scar. Soldiers raised their rifles. The half-tracks rumbled to life, engines snarling. The major stood tall, hands clasped behind his back. He raised his watch. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the still morning air. "Begin." A whistle shrieked. 75 boys took their first step forward. The long walk had begun. The first mile was easy. That was the lie every boy told himself as his sneakers slapped the asphalt in neat, nervous rhythm. The forest was still wrapped in morning haze, the air damp and cool, and the boys' steps fell in unison like a hesitant drumbeat. It almost felt like a parade. Almost. But parades didn't have half-tracks crawling behind you like predators. Parades didn't have rifles mounted on swivels, soldiers' eyes fixed on your every twitch. Ethan tried to keep his breathing steady. 4 miles per hour. That was the rule. Too slow, and the bracelet on his wrist would scream red. 4 warnings, and you were done. He glanced around. Some boys already looked winded, their chests heaving, sweat darkening the fabric under their arms. Too much adrenaline at the start. They were burning themselves out before the walk had even truly begun. Others smiled as if this was all a game. A tall boy with messy black hair walked with a strange swagger, whistling under his breath. Another hummed a tune, though his voice trembled. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. The gray line of pavement stretched endlessly ahead, vanishing into the mist. There was no finish line, not until everyone else was gone. The silence pressed down like a suffocating blanket. Every sound felt magnified, shoes scuffing gravel, the groan of engines behind them, the rustle of trees whispering secrets. Somewhere deep in the woods, an animal screamed. Something small, caught by something larger. A shiver crawled down Ethan's spine. Hell of a morning, huh? The voice startled him. He turned to see the blond boy from earlier, freckles scattered across his face like stars. He walked with an easy gait, as if he'd done this before. Yeah, Ethan muttered. His throat was dry. The boy grinned. Name's Kyle. Ethan. Kyle nodded toward the half-tracks. Can't take my eyes off those things. Like vultures. Ethan glanced back. The armored vehicles lumbered along, their wheels crushing the dirt at the road's edge. Soldiers sat perched on the sides, rifles gleaming. Their faces were stone. Not men, not human, just executioners waiting for a reason. Don't look at them, Ethan muttered. Kyle raised his brows. Why not? Because they're not here for us. They're here for the ones who can't make it. Kyle was quiet after that. The sun rose higher, burning off the mist. Heat began to sink into the asphalt, rising in shimmering waves. The road stretched on, a black ribbon slicing through endless forest. An hour passed. Then the first boy faltered. He was short, stocky, his legs already trembling. His breath rasped loud enough for those around him to hear. Ethan noticed the red glow on the boy's bracelet, the first warning. Pick it up, someone hissed, but the boy's face twisted with panic. He stumbled, forcing his legs into an awkward jog, trying to catch up. The bracelet blinked yellow again. Second warning. The half-track's engine roared closer, hungry. The boy gasped, tried to run, but his legs gave out. He collapsed on the pavement, wheezing, eyes wide. The whistle shrieked. Third warning. Get up, get up, get up, a kid shouted, voice cracking. But the boy didn't move fast enough. The bracelet turned red. The shot cracked like thunder. Ethan flinched. The boy's body jerked, then lay still, blood blooming dark across his shirt. The sound echoed through the forest, sharp and final. No one stopped walking. No one screamed. They just kept moving, eyes locked on the road, breaths shallow. The body was dragged off the pavement. Soldiers moved like shadows, efficient, silent. The half-tracks rolled on. The walk didn't pause. It never paused. Ethan's stomach churned. He forced himself to breathe, to keep his pace steady, to ignore the sticky warmth spreading across the road behind them. One boy gone. 74 left. Kyle's face had gone pale. Jesus, he whispered. That was fast. Ethan swallowed hard. His throat burned. He wanted to answer, but words wouldn't come. The hours crawled on. The sun climbed higher, baking the boys in relentless heat. Sweat dripped down Ethan's temples, stung his eyes, soaked his shirt. His calves burned, but he forced them to keep moving, step after step. The road never changed. Trees. Asphalt. Shadows. Heat. After the third hour, another boy fell behind. He had blisters already, his shoes torn, blood smearing the pavement with every step. His face twisted in agony, but he kept trying, limping, stumbling. Warning. 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 Then another shot cracked the air. Another body dragged away. By noon, the walk had become mechanical. Step, step, step. Breath, breath, breath. The boys no longer looked at each other. Eye contact meant weakness. The forest pressed in closer now, branches clawing toward the road like skeletal fingers. The air smelled damp, moldy, rotten. Flies buzzed thick around the edges of the path, drawn to things unseen. Ethan's thoughts blurred. Time stretched. He didn't know if it had been 5 miles or 50. His bracelet told him the pace, glowing steady green. He clung to that light like it was the last star in the sky. Then came the third boy. He didn't collapse. He didn't stumble. He just stopped. One moment he was walking. The next, he turned, faced the forest, and stepped off the road. He walked into the trees, shoulders squared, head held high. The whistle shrieked. Warning. He didn't stop. The shot rang out, echoing through the pines. Birds exploded from the branches in a frenzy of wings. The boy's body crumpled among the roots. No one spoke. No one dared. Ethan's chest felt tight. Each step was heavier now, each breath sharper, as though the air itself wanted to cut his lungs. He thought of home, of his sister's voice, of his mother's sobs. He thought of his father's silence. He wondered if they were watching the broadcast. If they saw his face in the endless march. If they saw the bodies falling. The road wound on. The forest. Thinned, opening into fields of tall, dry grass swaying in the hot wind. The sun scorched overhead, a merciless eye. Shadows shrank, leaving nowhere to hide. Ethan's legs screamed. His skin burned. His throat was raw. Another boy fell. Another shot cracked the air. 71 left. The walk went on. By the third day, the road no longer looked like a road. It was a graveyard. The gray asphalt had been smeared with streaks of blood, faint but visible, little reminders of boys who had once walked here and no longer did. The trees that lined the path now seemed less like trees and more like watchful sentinels, their branches arched overhead, dripping leaves like withered fingers. Ethan had stopped counting the bodies. At first, he had kept tally in his head, 75, 74, 73. But the deaths came too quickly. Some collapsed and were shot before they hit the ground. Others dragged their legs for miles, faces slack with exhaustion, before the inevitable happened. Now, Ethan just walked. The hunger gnawed at him. The contest gave them water, plastic bottles at designated stations along the way, but no food. That was the cruelty. As the miles dragged into days, the boys' stomachs turned hollow, their cheeks sank, their legs thinned into sticks of pain. Ethan's ribs ached. His lips cracked, bleeding when he tried to lick them. Beside him, Kyle walked with his head tilted back, staring at the sky as if the sun might burn through him if he looked too long. His freckles were redder now, his grin gone. "You ever think," Kyle muttered, voice hoarse, "that maybe we're already dead?" Ethan didn't answer. His tongue felt like sandpaper. Kyle laughed weakly. "No, seriously. Like, maybe this road ain't even real. Maybe we all got shot the second we stepped over that line, and this," he waved a trembling hand at the endless pavement, "this is hell." Ethan forced his voice out, low and cracked. "Feels like it." The boys around them were falling apart. One kid muttered to himself constantly, whispering broken prayers. Another clawed at his hair until his scalp bled. A tall, gaunt boy screamed at the trees for hours, until a warning silenced him. He walked quietly after that, eyes wide, lips trembling. The half-tracks crawled behind them, engines groaning like monsters that never needed to rest. The soldiers never spoke, never blinked. Their rifles caught the sunlight in harsh flashes. Every so often, a scream would tear through the line, some boy falling, some boy begging. Then the whistle, shrill and merciless. Then the shot. The sound of it haunted Ethan. It didn't matter how many times it came. Each crack was a nail in the coffin of his nerves. Each echo made his heart lurch, his breath falter. He would force his legs to move faster, terrified his bracelet would glow red. He dreamed of it when he blinked. He saw the flashes of rifles, the jerks of broken bodies, the blood seeping into dirt. He heard the silence that always followed, heavier than the shot itself. By nightfall, the walk turned worse. The forest gave way to open fields, black under the moonlight. The sky was swollen with stars, thousands of them watching like cold, distant eyes. The boys' shadows stretched long and thin, their movements jerky, puppet-like. Ethan's legs felt carved from stone. Each step sent knives shooting up his calves. His feet were blistered, swollen, every nerve raw. He could feel his socks squishing with blood. Some boys had begun to limp, their joints locking, their bones grinding audibly in the quiet night. One stumbled forward, groaning, dragging his feet like they were chains. He slowed again, until the bracelet shrieked red. The shot rang. Ethan flinched, stumbled. Kyle grabbed his arm, steadying him. "Don't look," Kyle muttered. His voice was thin, breaking. Don't look anymore." But Ethan couldn't help it. He had already seen too much. The dead never closed their eyes. Hours bled into each other. Time lost meaning. The only thing that mattered was the next step, then the next, then the next. If you stopped thinking about the steps, you stopped moving. If you stopped moving, you stopped living. A boy near the front began singing. His voice was cracked, out of tune, but loud in the stillness. "Oh, say can you see?" It was the national anthem. Some joined in. Most didn't. The song wavered, collapsed, ended in broken sobs. Then came another shot. The soldiers didn't like noise. Ethan's mind felt frayed, unraveling. Thoughts came in loops. He remembered his sister's face, her small hands gripping his arm the night before he left. "Don't go," she had whispered. "Please, Ethan. Don't go." He had kissed her forehead, promised her he would win. Now he wasn't sure winning even existed. What was the prize, really? No one ever saw the winners again. Rumor said they were taken away, given riches, power, anything they wanted. But another rumor said they were buried alongside the rest, because no one was meant to survive the walk. The uncertainty chewed at Ethan's sanity. He wasn't just walking against exhaustion. He was walking against doubt. Against the creeping suspicion that there was no end, no salvation. Only this road. Forever. The night stretched on. The stars wheeled overhead. The boys stumbled, dragged, muttered, cried. Then came the wolves. At first, Ethan thought it was imagination, the glint of eyes in the grass, the low growl rolling under the drone of engines. But then he saw shapes moving in the dark. Gray shadows, stalking the line, teeth flashing. The soldiers ignored them. A boy stumbled too close to the edge of the road. His bracelet shrieked a warning, but before he could correct his pace, a wolf lunged from the grass, jaws snapping. The boy screamed. The soldiers raised their rifles. Not at the wolf. At him. The shot cracked. The body fell. The wolf snarled, teeth sinking into flesh. Blood sprayed, hot and black under moonlight. The boys' screams died in gurgles. The line of walkers didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The forest swallowed the sound. The half-tracks rolled on. Ethan's stomach lurched. He gagged, bile burning his throat, but he didn't dare slow. He realized then what the wolves already knew. The walk wasn't just killing them. It was feeding the earth. The road was a vein. The boys were blood. The forest was hungry. Step. 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 The walk went on. By the fourth night, Ethan couldn't tell if he was awake anymore. The walk had become a blur of shadows and screams, gunshots and silence, the road twisting endlessly underfoot. His body was no longer his, it was some mechanical husk that just kept moving, step after step, no matter how badly his bones begged to splinter. Sleep clawed at him. That was the real torture. You could endure hunger, endure blisters, endure the ache in your spine until your body became a hollow drumbeat of pain, but sleep? Sleep was a predator crouched just beyond reach, whispering promises. His eyes kept closing. Every time they did, his knees buckled. His bracelet glowed yellow, shrieking at him to wake up. But waking up only meant realizing he was still here. Still walking. Still dying. Kyle walked beside him, barely recognizable now. His face was sunken, his freckles washed pale, his lips cracked and bleeding. His grin had vanished days ago, replaced by the haunted stare of a boy too young to know what it meant to rot. You ever dream while you're awake? Kyle rasped, voice shredded by thirst. Ethan blinked. What? I keep seeing things, Kyle said. His eyes darted around, fever bright. My mom's out there, in the grass. I saw her face last mile. She was smiling at me. Waving. Ethan swallowed, his throat raw. It's just your head playing tricks. Kyle's cracked lips twisted. Then why was she holding a plate of apple pie? Ethan didn't answer. Because he had seen things too. He had seen his little sister darting through the trees, her hair glowing in the moonlight, her giggle echoing. He had seen his father standing by the roadside, arms crossed, shaking his head with disappointment. He had seen faces in the bark of the trees, faces screaming, their mouths stretching wider and wider until the wood split apart. The walk was eating their minds as surely as it was eating their flesh. Some boys gave into it. A thin, dark-haired kid 2 rows ahead suddenly shrieked, a high, piercing sound that made the others stumble. Spiders, he screamed, clawing at his face. They're on me, they're in me, get them off. He stumbled, slowed. Warning. He tore at his shirt, skin bleeding under his nails, eyes rolling. He ran sideways, off the road, into the field. The soldiers didn't wait. The crack of the rifle was almost merciful. His body hit the grass, jerking once before going still. No one looked. No one dared. But Ethan couldn't stop hearing the word. Spiders. For miles afterward, his skin crawled. The forest thickened again, shadows crowding close. The night air was damp and cold, and the boy's breath fogged in trembling clouds. Some muttered nonsense, others hummed tunelessly. One boy began reciting multiplication tables, over and over, until his voice broke into sobs. The walk had stripped them down to their rawest selves. No bravado. No swagger. No jokes. Just animals, half dead, fighting the pull of gravity. Another scream tore through the night. This one wasn't madness. It was agony. A boy had stepped wrong. His ankle twisted, snapping with a sickening crack. He collapsed, rolling on the pavement, clutching his leg. The whistle shrieked. No, he cried, voice breaking. Please, I can still, please, don't. The shot silenced him. Ethan forced himself not to look. But he could feel the blood spray warm against his cheek. He wiped it with his sleeve, trembling. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might break his ribs. His bracelet glowed yellow. He had slowed. He forced his legs faster. Step. 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 He wasn't sure how many were left. 50. Less. The line had thinned so much he could see clear stretches of empty road ahead, empty road behind. The walk was swallowing them one by one, erasing them from the world. Kyle stumbled beside him, muttering nonsense now. His eyes were glassy, his words slurred. Ethan, he whispered, if I fall, don't look at me. Ethan clenched his jaw. You're not gonna fall. Kyle laughed, a broken sound. We all fall. The night deepened. The moon sank low, painting the road in silver. Ethan's vision blurred. His legs no longer felt attached to him. They were foreign things, moving on their own, dragging him forward. He thought about stopping. Just stopping. He imagined the relief of lying down on the pavement, of letting sleep swallow him whole, of no longer hearing the endless shuffle of feet. He imagined the bullet, clean and final. But then he saw his sister's face again, tear-streaked, begging him not to go. And he kept walking. Hours bled together. The boys became shadows, shambling husks. The engines behind them droned like a lullaby of death. Then came dawn. The sun rose, bleeding red across the horizon. The sky looked like it was on fire. The light revealed faces twisted with exhaustion, lips cracked open like old wounds, eyes sunken deep in hollow sockets. One boy dropped to his knees. His bracelet screamed red. The shot cracked. Another stumbled, tripping on his own swollen feet. Shot. By mid-morning, the line was almost half of what it had been. Ethan didn't know how he was still moving. His body was screaming, his mind unraveling. Every step was an act of violence against himself. And still, the road stretched on. A voice whispered in his head. There's no end. There's never an end. You'll walk forever. This is the prize. This is the punishment. This is all there is. He bit his lip until blood filled his mouth. He wanted to scream, but his throat was dust. Kyle's head lolled forward. His steps faltered. His bracelet flickered yellow. Don't, Ethan rasped. Don't you dare. Kyle lifted his eyes, tears streaking his filthy cheeks. I'm so tired, Ethan. The bracelet turned red. The rifle cracked. Kyle's body crumpled against Ethan's arm, then slid away, hitting the pavement with a hollow thud. His eyes were still open, staring at nothing. Ethan stumbled, choking on air. His vision swam. His bracelet glowed. Yellow. He forced himself forward, step after step, even as his stomach twisted with grief, even as bile burned his throat. The road didn't care. The soldiers didn't care. The walk went on. Ethan no longer knew how many days had passed. The sun rose. The sun fell. The moon glared down. The stars wheeled overhead like watchful eyes. His body was a machine now, stripped of thought, stripped of choice. Legs moved because stopping meant death. Breath came because air forced itself in. His mind had become a hollow room, filled only with footsteps. Kyle was gone. Ethan still saw his face every time he blinked, the wide eyes, the collapsing weight, the empty stare at the sky. His death replayed in Ethan's skull like a broken film reel, jerking forward again and again. Sometimes, in the corner of his vision, Ethan swore he saw Kyle still walking. Not beside him, not alive. Just a shadow. A ghost drifting in rhythm with the rest of them, mouth open in a silent grin, his bracelet glowing faint red. Ethan would look. The shadow would vanish. But then another would appear. A boy who'd been shot on the first day, his jaw blown apart, blood frozen in time around his mouth. He walked in the distance, not slowing, not stopping. And then another. A boy with his ankle twisted backward, dragging it like a broken puppet. And another. The line of walkers wasn't thinning, it was growing. Because the dead kept pace. Ethan's head throbbed. He pressed his hands against his eyes, but he couldn't block it out. The endless shuffle of feet grew louder, echoing inside his skull. The living. The dead. Together. Step, step, step. He wasn't sure anymore which ones were real. The boy on his left muttered constantly, a whisper too soft to make out. The boy on his right laughed under his breath, every few steps, the sound cracked and hollow. Somewhere up the line, someone began singing again. Not the anthem this time. A lullaby. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. The voice trembled, broke. Another voice joined in, then another. Soon the line was filled with a chorus of boys, their tones ragged and cracked, voices shaking under the weight of exhaustion. "Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird." The lullaby twisted into something monstrous, echoing over the road, blending with the groan of engines and the crack of gunfire as another boy collapsed mid-song. His voice cut off in an instant. The song continued anyway. Ethan bit his tongue until he tasted blood. He wanted to scream at them to stop, but the sound stuck in his chest. He saw his sister again. She was standing at the roadside this time, her small hands clutching the hem of her nightgown, her hair tangled around her face. Her eyes were wide and wet. "Come home, Ethan." His heart lurched. He almost stumbled toward her. His bracelet flashed yellow. He blinked, and she was gone. The forest loomed again, dark and endless. The shadows between the trees stretched too far, twisting like fingers across the road. Ethan's breath came in shallow gasps. His chest felt hollow. Somewhere behind him, a boy screamed. The sound wasn't fear. It was rage. "I quit. You hear me? I quit." He stopped walking. Turned toward the half-tracks, arms outstretched. His bracelet glowed red. The soldiers raised their rifles. "Do it," the boy shrieked. "Fucking do it." The rifles fired. His body jerked, holes tearing through him, his chest splitting in sprays of blood. He fell backward into the dust, arms still open. The line didn't pause. Ethan stumbled past the corpse, heart pounding so hard he thought it might split his ribs. He glanced once at the boy's face. The eyes were still open. They all were. The walk punished them not just with bullets, but with memory. Every dead face stayed. Etched into the pavement. Etched into the inside of Ethan's eyelids. By night, the hallucinations grew worse. Ethan's feet bled openly now, skin shredded, socks sticky with red. Every step squished, a wet slap against the road. His legs burned so badly that he no longer felt pain, just a numb heat that pulsed with every step. The trees whispered louder. He swore he heard words. "Stop walking. Stop walking. Stop walking." He shook his head. "Shut up," he rasped. The boy beside him turned, startled. "What?" Ethan blinked. The boy's face wasn't a face at all. It was his father's, his jaw clenched, his eyes hard and cold. "You volunteered. You wanted this. So don't you dare stop." Ethan gasped. He stumbled. His bracelet blinked yellow. He forced his body faster, lungs tearing for air. When he looked again, the boy was just a boy. Ethan wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out was a dry rattle. The road became a river of ghosts. Every face he had seen fall was still there, walking, bleeding, limping. Some had holes where their stomachs used to be, some dragged their heads by the skin of their necks, some dripped blood onto the pavement with every step. The soldiers didn't notice. Or maybe they did, and didn't care. The line thinned further. By dawn, Ethan counted only 30 shadows with him. Maybe less. He didn't count the ghosts anymore. The sun rose red again, spilling bloodlight over the road. The air stank of rot, of sweat, of death. The boy ahead of Ethan fell without a sound. He didn't trip. He didn't cry out. He just folded, like his strings had been cut. His bracelet flashed red. The rifle cracked. The body twitched. Still. Ethan stepped over him. His foot landed in something wet. He didn't look down. The hunger was gnawing at him worse now. His stomach screamed, folding in on itself. He thought about food constantly: steak, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, pancakes dripping with syrup. He could smell them, taste them. His body shook with it. He bit his hand to stop himself from sobbing. The dead walked beside him. Some smiled. Some wept. Some stared at him with hollow eyes, lips moving in silent words. Ethan didn't want to hear them. But he did. "You'll join us soon." He clenched his fists, nails cutting his palms. He forced himself faster. Step. 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 His bracelet stayed green. But his mind was bleeding red. The walk went on. The morning broke without sunlight. The clouds hung low, swollen and heavy, like bruises stretched across the horizon. The boys, what few were left, trudged forward on blistered feet. Their shadows, stretched thin by the dim light, dragged behind them like reluctant companions. Each step was a negotiation between will and body, bones grinding, muscles twitching in rebellion, lungs pulling air that felt too sharp, too cold. But it wasn't just exhaustion anymore. No, exhaustion had become familiar. What haunted them now was the silence. There were 14 boys left. Out of 100. 14. The deaths had become a rhythm, but the rhythm had slowed. Fewer walked off the road into their grave with each passing hour. Those that remained had survived because something inside them refused to die, but that refusal came at a cost. They no longer cried. They no longer screamed when their friends fell. The silence had swallowed everything human about them. Dean felt the silence most sharply. He used to talk, back in the first days of the walk, when chatter helped drown the fear. He joked about food, about girls, about movies he'd never get to see. He laughed with his friends, a hollow laugh, but still a laugh. Now, nothing. He couldn't remember the last word he'd spoken. He opened his mouth sometimes, tried to form sound, but the words stuck like glue. His throat felt raw, but not from talking, from holding everything back. The soldiers' boots behind them crunched in perfect unison. Every boy could hear it. The boy's own footsteps, though uneven, became a grotesque symphony of flesh and determination. Occasionally someone coughed, or groaned. But no one dared to truly break the silence anymore. Because to speak was to acknowledge. To admit what this was. At mile 291, the road curved into a desolate forest. The trees stood like blackened skeletons, their bare branches swaying as if whispering secrets the boys weren't meant to know. The wind funneled through them, carrying a sound like whispers, low, harsh, guttural. Dean glanced at the boy beside him, Thomas. His lips were pale, cracked, bleeding in thin lines. His eyes darted around, restless. He seemed to be listening. "Do you hear that?" Thomas finally whispered, voice trembling. Dean almost didn't answer. But something in him snapped. He croaked, "What?" "The voices," Thomas said. He pointed weakly at the forest. "They're calling us. The trees. They want us to stop." Dean's stomach twisted. He tried to laugh, but it came out a dry cough. "It's the wind, Thomas. Just the wind." Thomas shook his head violently, almost stumbling. His speed dipped for half a second, and the metallic click of a rifle cocking rang out from behind. Thomas jolted back into pace, trembling. "No. They're calling my name," Thomas whispered again. His voice grew sharp, feverish. "They know me." Dean didn't respond. Because he did hear something. A whisper. Not just the wind. Words, broken, but words. "Come here, stop walking, rest." He tried to shut it out. Tried to focus on the road. By midday, the sun finally bled weakly through the bruised sky. But it brought no comfort, just heat, unbearable and sharp, pressing down like a punishment. The boys sweated through their thin clothes, and their skin blistered. It was during this swelter that another boy broke. His name was Kyle. He had walked in silence for days, his eyes fixed downward, lips muttering prayers no one could hear. At mile 297, he slowed. Just slightly. The soldiers raised their rifles. But Kyle didn't care. He stopped altogether. His face tilted toward the sky as if trying to drink the weak sun. Tears streaked his dirty face. "I'm done," he whispered. No one spoke. No one begged him to move. The soldiers fired. The crack echoed across the trees, bouncing between trunks, shattering the silence for only a heartbeat. Kyle's body fell face first, his blood painting the cracked asphalt. The boys kept walking. The silence closed in again, heavier now, suffocating. By evening, 13 boys remained. The road narrowed into a valley where the forest pressed close on both sides. The trees leaned inward like watchers, their branches tangled above, choking out what little light remained. Shadows swallowed the boys, stretching their faces into grotesque masks. Dean's mind began to slip. He thought of his mother, her face already blurring in memory. He tried to recall her voice, but it was gone. He thought of his father, who had encouraged him to sign up for this contest. He thought of his brother, too young to understand. He tried to remember their house, their laughter. But it all felt unreal now, like dreams from a fever he'd once had. All that was real was the road. The walk. The silence. He realized with terror that he no longer remembered why he was here. Night fell. And that was when the real horror began. In the darkness, the whispers grew louder. Not just from the forest, but from the road itself. The cracks in the pavement seemed to breathe. The shadows between the boys swelled and pulsed as if alive. Dean felt eyes on him, eyes in the trees, eyes in the sky, eyes in the dirt. His skin prickled. Then, at mile 302, Thomas snapped. He screamed. A raw, animal sound that tore through the night like a blade. It startled everyone, boys stumbled, soldiers tightened their grips on rifles. Thomas clawed at his own ears. "Stop it. Stop whispering to me. I won't go with you." He staggered into the trees, breaking pace. Rifles followed. "Don't shoot," he begged, his face twisted with desperation. "Please, don't let them take me." The shots rang out. Thomas collapsed in the undergrowth, twitching, then still. The boys quickened their pace, too afraid to even glance at his body. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Dean wanted to scream too. But he didn't. He clenched his jaw so tightly his teeth ached. He focused on his feet, one in front of the other, over and over. But even in that focus, he couldn't block out the voices. "Stop walking. Lay down. Rest. It's over. It's safe now." He bit his tongue until he tasted blood. By the time dawn broke, there were 11 boys left. The next day, silence became unbearable. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It wasn't empty. It was suffused with the whispers, with the memory of screams, with the weight of absence. Dean realized that silence wasn't the lack of sound. It was the presence of everything unspoken. And it was killing them. One by one, the boys began to falter. A stumble. A drop in speed. A soldier's rifle rising. The road painted with blood again and again. Until, at mile 315, only 9 boys remained. And Dean knew, deep in his bones, that silence would not let them reach the end. Not all of them. Maybe not even him. The world had collapsed into nothing but sound and shadow. The pounding of boots, the steady thud-thud-thud of feet grinding against cracked pavement, was all that remained of life. No birds sang anymore. The trees that lined the endless highway loomed like skeletal witnesses, their branches clawing at the gray sky. Only a handful of boys were left now. Dean, his face burned red and cracked from sun and wind, walked with a blank stare, his eyes locked on the road as if hypnotized. His lips had split so deeply that blood clotted at the corners whenever he tried to lick them. His breathing came in short gasps, ragged and uneven. Behind him, Caleb's gait wavered every other step. His knees buckled slightly as if he were no longer sure what the word balance meant. Each motion forward was a fight against gravity, against flesh, against the creeping embrace of death. To their side, Richie had begun muttering to himself. At first it was whispers, but now his voice was loud, broken, wild. He shouted names no one knew, laughed at things that didn't exist, cursed the soldiers in the shadows. He had torn strips of his shirt away to bandage the bloody blisters across his chest, but now his chest gleamed with open sores. And then there was Eli, the last boy who still had some semblance of awareness. The boy who had watched his friends collapse one by one. The boy who had survived not because he was the strongest, or the fastest, but because some twisted instinct in him clung to life with claws sharper than fear itself. The escort was still there. Silent. Omnipresent. The black figures of the soldiers sat atop armored vehicles that purred slowly along the side of the road. Their rifles gleamed. They had fired so many times now that the sound of gunfire was no longer shocking. It was expected. It was almost welcomed, the punctuation mark at the end of another broken sentence. The long walk had started with 100 boys. 99 had been silenced. And now 4 remained. But not for long. The air grew heavy as they entered the stretch of highway the walkers whispered about in the first days, the last mile. Of course, no one knew exactly where it began. But in Eli's heart, he felt it now. Something about the trees, about the strange way the air thinned and the shadows deepened, screamed finality. Dean's knees buckled, and he stumbled. For a heartbeat, Eli thought he would recover. But then he went down hard, his palms slapping the asphalt with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. He pushed himself up once, trembling violently, and then collapsed again. The soldiers didn't hesitate. Crack. The bullet slammed into the back of his head, spraying fragments across the pavement. His body jerked once and then lay still, a ragged heap of flesh and silence. The road claimed another. Now there were 3. Richie laughed. It was a mad, broken sound, more like choking than humor. "They don't want us to finish," he screamed. His voice was hoarse, his throat stripped raw. "It's a joke. A goddamn joke. No prize, no end, just bullets." He veered toward the tree lean, eyes wide, face stretched into a grotesque grin. Eli opened his mouth to shout for him, but no sound came out. Richie ran maybe 6 steps. His pace broke the rules. The soldiers raised their rifles. Crack. The shot took him in the spine. He collapsed in a twitching heap, mouth open in a scream that never came. The escort rolled by, one soldier glancing briefly down at the broken body, as if checking off a box. 2 left. Eli and Caleb. The silence stretched between them, heavier than words. The wind hissed through the skeletal trees. Caleb's breath rattled in his chest like loose screws in a rusted machine. Eli knew he was dying. Anyone could see it. His skin had gone pale, slick with sweat, eyes sunken deep in their sockets. His legs trembled with each step. Still, he walked. Still, he tried. And Eli hated him for it. Every second Caleb survived was another second Eli had to keep going. Another step forward into hell. Another moment of pain. He wanted Caleb to fall, to stop, to just give in and let Eli have this cursed victory. But Caleb didn't fall. He limped forward, step by step, refusing to surrender. And in that moment, Eli realized something terrifying: he wasn't walking toward life. He was walking toward a future he no longer wanted. Victory meant nothing now. Survival was a punishment. Caleb stumbled again. This time he caught himself, arms flailing like a ragdoll, his body twisting dangerously close to collapse. His lips moved, words spilling out so faint Eli could barely hear them. Don't let them win. It wasn't clear if he was speaking to Eli or himself. Maybe both. And then it happened. Caleb's knees buckled one final time. His body hit the pavement. He clawed weakly at the road, tried to drag himself upright, but his body betrayed him. His head turned, eyes locking on Eli's for one last moment. There was fear there. But also something else. Relief. The rifles spoke. Crack. Caleb's body went limp. His chest stopped rising. The echo of the gunfire rolled across the empty highway. And Eli was alone. The silence was unbearable now. His footsteps echoed too loudly in his ears. He could hear the scrape of his blistered feet, the wheeze of his lungs, the frantic hammer of his heart. The escort vehicles rolled along beside him, their engines a low growl, like predators waiting for him to slip. A voice rose inside him. At first it was his own. Just stop. Just fall. It's over. But then the voice changed. It became the voices of the boys who had walked with him. Richie, Caleb, Dean, even the ones he barely remembered. He could hear them all whispering to him, taunting him, begging him, screaming at him. Keep walking, Eli. Don't let it end. Fall, fall, fall. We're waiting for you. He clutched his head, gasping, staggering forward. The road blurred. His vision doubled. The edges of the world seemed to bleed into shadow. And then, through the haze, he saw it. The end. Or at least something that looked like it. A black arch rose from the pavement ahead, massive and unnatural, stretching over the road like the gaping mouth of some great beast. No one had ever mentioned it before. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe it was madness. But Eli couldn't stop. His feet carried him toward it, dragged him closer step by step. The arch grew larger. Beneath it, the air shimmered strangely, as though reality itself was peeling away. The soldiers didn't stop him. They didn't fire. They simply rolled forward, watching silently. Eli stumbled under the arch, his body shaking violently. His vision darkened at the edges. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. He collapsed to his knees, but no bullets came. Instead, the shadows whispered. You've won. The voice was everywhere and nowhere. Cold. Inhuman. You are the last. The road is yours. Walk it forever. Eli screamed, or thought he did, but no sound left his throat. He tried to stand. His body obeyed. He walked again, though his muscles were torn, though his heart felt like it was ripping itself apart. And then he saw them. The others. All the boys who had fallen, who had been shot, who had collapsed, they stood on either side of the road now, pale and translucent, their faces twisted with hunger and grief. Their eyes burned holes into him. Keep walking, Eli. Their voices merged into one, a roar that drowned out the world. He walked. He couldn't stop. He would never stop. The long walk wasn't a contest. It was a curse. And Eli had become its prisoner. Forever.